Keep one. Do that. Right, good afternoon everyone and welcome to this meeting of the Governance, Risk and Audit Committee of North Norfolk District Council on Tuesday the 10th of September. My apologies for starting a few minutes late. Our previous meetings overran. Right, to receive apologies for absence, please.
I've received an apology from Councillor Penfold.
And do we have any substitutes? Thank you. Do we have any public questions this afternoon? Thank you. Do we have any items of urgent business? Mute that. One bottom right screen, next to live, look.
I think that should do it now. Thank you.
Yeah. Minutes of the last meeting. Does anyone have any comments on the minutes of the last meeting? Page by page. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 6. Page 5. No. Is there anyone who accepts their true record? Those in favour, please. Thank you very much. It's unanimous. Right, declarations of interest. I'm short of declarations of interest. Very much. Interest in Audit Committee update and an action list. Page 7, the 17, I believe. Okay, so number 73. I sent around an update to everyone. What we have done is actually said that after receiving that update, everyone was happy to accept the materiality reporting levels. And you agree that to please? Okay.
Yes.
And we've agreed to accept that. Number 74. We're still waiting 2 responses. We still haven't received the written response on why the council didn't participate in time scales of 15 days. And we haven't received the written response on the outstanding commitment from township houses. I don't know whether anyone was able to comment on those at this stage, or whether we need to carry them forward to the next meeting.
Chair, I'm happy to give you an update in part on the complaints position. You may be aware that as part of the response to the corporate peer review, corporate leadership team have set up a number of strategic boards, oversight boards. One of those oversight boards is the Performance and Productivity Oversight Board, which I'm chairing. That has a number of objectives. One of those objectives is looking at complaints and the LGSO provision as well. And so the intent as part of that is to undertake some work to deal with complaints and bring those in line, and to provide some accountability into people to say, where are we, where's the response? The other thing that I would add is that the authority has been using a system for managing its complaints in terms of a system that is now unsupported by the developer. We're currently looking at a provision where we bring that in line with one of our other systems. That work is ongoing and being undertaken at the moment. To move, that should mean that the complaints management is much easier for officers to deal with, because it will be a system that integrates with the current other back office systems, whereas the current one is independent. So work is being undertaken. I apologise that you haven't had a written update. I will make sure that there is one for you in time for the next one, a more fuller update in terms of that I've been able to give you today.
And lovely, if you've also formed boards by then, we should quite interesting. So, thank you very much. Item 77. I understand that work is still ongoing. Item B, we haven't received a report on cost and resources, 037 from risk.
Yes, I think this originally was entered on to the corporate risk register following a discussion with myself and Emily Katz in regard to some of the expensive prosecutions that we do. So if we get a health and safety prosecution, for example, it can that goes to trial, it can easily get over £100,000 on the increase. So I can discuss with her and look at what's happened in the past, give a short report as to extra costs and resource issues.
To find that useful in understanding exposure. Excellent. Thank you.
I'll just add as well that within the statement of accounts, we do make a comment and we no change the cases that we don't understand in that under our contingent liabilities note. Is a bit of information in there that is
Thank you. Item D, information posted in the local plan. I don't know, had to ask position councillors about this. I don't know whether you've received a response to that. Certainly, we've had an update from Andrew, the portfolio holder, about the local plan and portfolio progress, but I don't know if you've received that same report.
The only one I've seen is what was in the cabinet papers yesterday.
So I will ask, I'm happy to undertake an action to ask Councillor Brown to let you have that update that we have, because it's very useful looking forward to it. And I'll ask her to go to all the positions. Appointment of an independent member, we'll hear about later. It's on track. And thank you, Councillor Cushing. I received feedback from you. Right, we'll discuss this later. Lovely, thank you. Right, so we'll move on to the local audit backlog in England, and I'd like to ask the external auditor, please, to take us through where we are on this, and going to move things forward in a positive direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I start with a brief introduction. Appreciate this is the first time I've met you as a committee. So, Mark Hodgson, your previous partner, needs to rotate off of the audit. So he's gone off and I've come on to the audit. I trained with the Audit Commission and the audit to EY. My training days, I did most of the district councils and councils within Norfolk. So I actually spent quite a bit of time in this building. That's a genius. I must have come back. More recently, been involved with other boroughs, I've got council audit, so probably see most things in governments that have been of benefit to the council here. So in terms of the agenda item, I'm going to assume knowledge from previous conversations you've had with Mark and Tina in terms of where the current position was following the government's announcement last summer. At that point, it was a high likelihood your 21-22 and 22-23 financial years would be disclaimed under statute. I could assume that you kind of knew that position, and I'll pick up from there. Things have moved a little bit more recently. So there was a delay during the general election process, and then following the announcement after the general election. So a further pause while we waited for the new administration to consider what the previous plans were and whether they were going to enact them and change them at all. The minister made an announcement at the end of July. I think that's in your agenda pack. Essentially supporting the trajectory which was put in place by the system stakeholders previously. Probably the only change, quite a fundamental change, is they brought forward the dates for the backstop dates. So these are the dates that essentially reset the system. That has an impact clearly on the resources within the full system. So for us as a firm, we've had to go through a process of reprioritising our resources again, focusing on doing sufficient work to make sure that any 22, 23 and older financial periods are ready for the first backstop date, which is in mid-December. So for North Norfolk, that'll be 21, 22 and 22, 23, those two financial statements. We are also prioritising value for money work across all years, because that will always be done. That's a must. We're protecting other sectors. So later in the year, we start to work on higher education and NHS, so just making sure we've got resources for them. And then we are finishing any 23, 24 audits that we can, and we're prioritising them initially based on, is there a set of accounts published in July in line with the requirements? Is that fully supported by a set of working papers? If so, we are endeavouring to complete as many of them as possible. So for North Norfolk's point of view, so the 23, 24 accounts haven't been published yet. There isn't a set of accounts for us to publish. What we've said to Tina is essentially when the accounts are published, let us know, and when so let us know when the accounts are published and when all the working papers are there to support that set of accounts. At that point in time, we'll then make an assessment as to whether we've got the capacity to complete the 23, 24 accounts audit prior to the next backstop date, which is February. You can see there's a very confined space and time. So there's a very high likelihood that your 23, 24 accounts will also be disclaimed under statute. See in the government's announcement that there's a recognition that there's going to be a lot of disclaimed opinions across the sector, and they've almost moved the reset year to 24, 25. That's going to be a key year. Let's get back on track and we start to rebuild assurance. So that was the update I was going to provide. This is a complex area. It keeps moving. I'm more happy to take any questions on it. Do as best I can.
Does anyone have any questions?
What level of risk would you say you have in terms of 2021, 22, 22, 23 being disclosed? We discussed this last time. Yeah, I think it's a good question. So I think that's where the focus turns. And I would add 23, 24 to that. So if there's a high likelihood that 23, 24 also gets disclaimed, the risk can manifest itself in 24, 25. Clearly, there's a number of years where we haven't got assurance over the opening balances. Now, there's an audit response to that. So there's auditing standards that will lead us how we gain that assurance. That's unlikely to happen in 1 year, possibly go over two or 3 years once we get full assurance, and that's normally what happens when there's a disclaimed opinion. 24, 25 will be the third year where we start to kind of unpick the assurance on the opening balances.
That's as it is. So the next question, if I may, is what the state is when 23, 24 will be available, the first draft will be available.
I would say it's likely to be available in October, I would have thought.
You might be geared up to pounce on those the minute they're available.
At that point in time, we'll make the assessment. So I think North, if you look at the different backstop dates, the first backstop date, 30th December. So the first priority is so the 21-22 accounts are now published and online. Getting the 22-23 accounts published. So once we hit that backstop, we have to disclaim at that point in time. If there are no accounts, there are escalations. That is the key point, I think, for North accounts, getting those set of accounts published for 2022 free in time for the first backstop date. Once the 23-24 accounts are published, then that's when we'll assess whether we've got the capacity to audit them ahead of the next backstop date in February.
Sam, can you confirm when you think the 22-23 accounts will be?
So we're in September.
I think that's the key, isn't it? Keeping moving forward. Have backlog and just push forwards down. Some of the noise on the pen. Actually, wrong things there. Okay, so we will move to item 9, update about standing audit recommendations. So I really didn't have fun reading the report like I did. Too small, limited magnifying glass to be able to read it. I thought new glasses or something. But I think it's encouraging to see the progress that has been made, and I think we should thank everybody for their support moving it forward. I don't know if anyone's got any comments they want to make at this point. I've got a few things to raise, but you've got questions first. Anything from the floor?
I can read it again, just. I'm sure the law somewhere saying that the report should be a minimum font size, but
It might be more easy to read on the laptop. Oh, simply because you like the zooming and that.
yeah.
And yeah, I found myself scrolling all over the place.
Yeah,
To trust it disappeared. And it was disappeared.
yeah, I do apologise for that. It is just in order to get all the information, and this is a one-off report. You won't be getting this again like this, because we'll obviously the internal audits update report regularly. It's just that we were asked to provide an update.
I mean, I think for me, there are a couple of questions I had on this, which I've just asked at pre-meeting, I think you should hear as well, was I did raise a concern that a number of the actions, the 3.3 on page 25, had been completed. The report hadn't been updated, because obviously if it hadn't been updated in a timely way, that could have an impact on the report that we have from the auditors, and also it makes us think it hasn't been done. So it's really important that they are updated in a timely manner. I also checked, because my understanding of 3.4 was that we'd had some improvement on the implementation of the capital financial system. And I've been assured that that is ongoing work, it's not, oh, it's an it is ongoing work and it is well underway. Anyone's got any questions on any of those points before we move on?
Yes, it says the total, but we said 3.4, not short, 3.4 relates to, but talk about the finance system, it says response given in March 2024. So it will be live by the end of March 2024. Well, that's the bottom of the picture, the first picture. What it live by the end of March 2024.
The finance system itself, we actually went live with it in December 22.
Well, it's really off the paper, so it's March.
But I think that's the foot of the date of the
So it will be, so that's why it looks like it's out of date.
Yeah, the bottom one, key controls insurance. 2302.
Does it a further update will be given at the meeting?
that's
That's-
previous comment made.
No.
Comments in green was the latest comments. Yes, apologies, the spreadsheet isn't at all used anyway, that was the response given, not.
Sorry, you said that's work in progress.
Yes, it's work in progress because the management are looking at new reports and seeing what other functionality that can be got out of the system. So it's a question of the system is up and running. So correct me if I'm wrong. The system is up and running and is working. We're not having any problems with it, but there is additional functionality that we could add to, and that work is ongoing and is almost continual function. But it's almost like a never-ending stream.
Yeah.
Right, I'll have a question. Is this a standard system used across the public sector? Or is there one finance system or do we have that was bespoke to Norfolk and Bradford and broadly the doing business system?
No, there are a number of finance systems that we could have purchased, ones that you may have heard of. Progresso, which is now Unit 4, SAP, which is people's Oracle. We bought one, now we're off the shelf, ours is one that's off the shelf from Civica. So they're not spoke to us, and one of the advantages of that is that, you know, they're continuously being developed and updated, and we will get those patches and updates as they come through. So we will always be working on the latest version of the system that is available to us, and obviously Civica is a massive organisation, massive company, providing this sort of software. So we do have, you know, a good system. It's just that we need to develop the system more. And now that we have the results team, I didn't introduce, sorry, down at the back there, he's our new chief technical accountant slash assistant director, really becoming our assistant director, finance assets. Now that we have him in place, we'll be able to develop the system more further and make these improvements, I think, quicker. It's not that we wouldn't make them, it's just it's been slow progress with the being downs or.
Makes sense. Yeah, so basically as it moves forward, you will be finding it will be much easier to use, and we'll be able to reap a lot more benefits and read a lot more from it. That's what they want to do. And it's growing all the time. Mr. Blatch, you wanted to comment?
Well, only to try and reassure Councillor Cushing that the council, all the council's main systems are proprietary products that have been procured. None of our major systems or operations have been developed in-house. So, you know, the planning uniform system, the Civica financial system, Revs and Bens. We used to use Express for elections, but they've recently been bought out by the Civica group. So there is a diminishing number of providers in these markets, but the system was procured through a competitive tendering process. And then technical evaluation to establish the extent to which it met our needs. So we have moved in terms of the civic financial system. The authority previously had something called financials. So yeah, it's not a product that is being developed in house or is being developed as a bespoke product. And tailored to our requirements, but it is it's a proprietary product.
No, yeah, thank you for that. I mean, I wasn't actually doubting that it's not a fit for purpose, product and all this. I suppose my reflection is it's curious in a way, obviously we've got, this is one example. If you look back at all lower tier government, obviously they're all doing their own things, they're probably have a variety of different systems. It makes you wonder whether that's actually the most efficient way of doing it, but that's not a reflection. That's more of a across the piece.
I understand and I share your position in that regard.
Yeah, I think it would be a lot easier for everyone if it was the same system.
Well, you get economies of scale, don't you? Simply, you'd have something. So that's where my question is coming from.
And I think one comment I would make, enough that I think it was an interesting point that came out from the discussions earlier, is we've also had like 5 or 6 different account managers. This, with this, a lot of the councils I work with have problems with.
I think our experience with implementing the uniform planning system was we had double the number of account managers that you've suggested we might have for the finance system. And over 4 or 5 years, we've probably had a dozen different lead project officers or account managers from the implementation of that system. It's a very dynamic and fast moving system, and we are in some respects at the mercy of those providers in terms of supporting this.
I think that's the point I was trying to make.
So these are external account managers?
Yes, yeah, not project officers within the authority.
But that obviously has an impact as well. Okay, any more questions on this?
I made the only comment is I'm looking around the car parking and the maintenance by Kingston and West Norfolk, which I think was raised in the very first grant committee I attended some years ago. When does that contract come up for renewal? Which we all seem to start on an ongoing basis, seem to query actually, are we getting what we're due?
And it ends in March, and there has been a strategic review, and Mrs. Stanley will be bringing a report to Cabinet in November as to the management of options available to the future management of that contract. So that's a piece of work which is nearing completion to be presented to Cabinet, and I would imagine maybe the scrutiny will want to understand the implications. It's important that that's done before Christmas in terms of those 2 processes.
I think that's important. It's good to know that the report's coming. Thank you. I had some questions around ICT disaster recovery and then 2316. It's what's going on the report up there.
I'm sure I'll comment on that one, or if not, I don't know where the comment is gone.
So we've got evidence sent to auditors. That's all I've got in the. I saw one, yeah. Sorry. It's the second, third of the large sheets. It's got page 29 on the bottom of it.
Your IT services team is a very good team, are one of probably a handful in the country that's actually carried out a proper full live test in terms of its recovery exercise. It did it over the Christmas period, and it so it shut down all the systems and rebooted them from the Clayton offices where we've got second set of servers.
Yep.
It carried that out. It was a very successful exercise. The team rebooted and we've got the system up and running very quickly. There were a few glitches, very minor though, and they have documented them, addressed those issues, And they now know that if we did actually have a real live disaster, we would be in a very good place in terms of being able to get up and running again very quickly. Not many councils get the opportunity or have the opportunity to do that. And I thought I had updated that comment.
Don't worry, I think sometimes we've also got out of alignment as well.
Right, that's good then,
So
yeah.
I think we just, point of making sure we understood that those.
Yeah, it is, yeah, that has been tested properly, people are monitoring testing that.
Okay. Perhaps I'm having more questions in this report.
Chair, just before you move off the audit recommendation, I wonder whether it would be beneficial to outline the approach that we're taking, so that I talked previously about the performance and productivity oversight board.
I think it would be very useful.
So what, I don't know why I've taken the glass off, I can't see anything. One of the objectives within board's terms of reference is that the board will have oversight of all audit recommendations to ensure timely delivery stroke completion. So the board is relatively in its infancy. We have had a couple of meetings as we've begun to start the work around some of those objectives. Mr. Stankley did get ahead of me in terms of the update for this, but there was an intention to write out, in fact, I have written out now to all of the people who are recommendation owners, asking them for or a set of questions dependent on their status. So for all of those who have something that says completed, I've asked them to confirm that that completion has been signed off by internal audit. Where there is a date that has gone past, I've asked them for an updated realistic timescale to completion with a timetable of actions in order to achieve those. And for those where there is some question of or where they've got dates that are coming up, I've asked them to confirm that they are still on track to deliver those to that timetable. So I'm waiting for those back. We have a board meeting on the 5th, I think it is, of September, where we'll discuss all of those. The intent is that we will have initially, we've increased the frequency of our meetings to monthly. And the intent is we will just keep an eye on these on the audit recommendations on a monthly basis. I'm hopeful that we can then reduce them down to a manageable size, and that when new audit recommendations come on, they will come onto the board's reference, and we will do exactly that. We will not just be saying to people, when's your completion date? We will be saying, what is your direction, and what are your actions to achieve that? And I'm hopeful that we will at some point have a bit of a dialogue with the internal audit representatives to make sure that we are getting that sign off back into the board, so that we've got a proper closure of the loop to say that the internal audits are completed. So we will be monitoring those closely and holding to account those audit innovation holders. I'm trying to time the meetings of our boards so that we are ahead of this meeting, so that I'm hopeful by the time you get to this, we will just be feeding in the up-to-date position, and that there will only be those. My aim is that we will not be having anything that has been extended or past due unless we absolutely understand the reasons behind it.
Excellent. And I think the other thing with dates of the meetings, to make sure it's timeliness, so that the internal auditor can get it in advance, so that she can update her report. I was asking some questions earlier about why there are differences between the two reports, because we'll see another one in a minute. And it's to do with the cut-offs and times of when the information has to be retrieved, and when it has to be with us. Yeah. So we just need to make sure we try and bring those together, please.
So the productivity oversight board, which Mr. Henderson referred to, is one of three that we developed as a corporate leadership team in response to recommendations of the peer review of last September. The others being a decarbonisation oversight board and a major board, and that is to strengthen governance and accountability across the organisation in terms of key areas of activity, headline around our mission around decarbonisation and net zero, the oversight of large projects, and then sort of more business as usual, and audit recommendations and productivity reporting in respect of the letter of the previous government, Simon Core. We did submit a response to that productivity plan. Those were in July. That hasn't yet been taken forward by the government, but I would imagine will be subject to review given the financial pressures. The Chancellor says that the finances remain.
I suppose I have a question. If we're going to have a project board, a major projects board, what's happening to the CDU?
Well, don't know whether the CDU has worked as a concept for this council. We have strengthened that role with 2 programme officers, Erica Temple and David Kingfisher. We are taking a different approach to both project monitoring through implementation and report to the major projects board, and also reflecting on corporate learning. So some of the big projects that we've delivered, they get that project completion status, but then in the months following implementation or operation, there is still points of learning, snagging, sometimes remediation issues, and we're giving greater focus to those, and David and Erica are supporting that process through.
Another question relating to that, but I'll see whether anyone's got any other questions first.
If I may just follow up on that. Is there one of the great challenges of any project is actually how you continually feed learning from projects that have been completed into the new ones that are starting. It's normally you could have some project completion form, which I don't know somewhere, and it gathers dust. So if you can solve that problem,
So
then you're
that's
doing very well indeed.
That's the objective of the major projects oversight board, to ensure that learning doesn't sit within a silo or department, but there are wider corporate understandings and learnings that can be taken forward into the future.
Yeah,
I think some of the projects that we've delivered have been invested in an individual team or department without necessarily timely advice or intervention of legal officers or finance officers, sometimes communications officers, and so it is a strengthening of the team approach that perhaps wasn't prevalent in the past.
no, it's like, what roles are on the major project board?
Sorry,
What roles are on the major project? Or who's on it? I suppose what the roles are on it.
it's chaired by Mrs. Stagley.
Then we do have Erica and David on the board, and then we have Paul Williams. He is our sort of our independent challenger. You know, he's there to look at the projects and look at the learning. We've got the project management framework, and the learning will be incorporated into that framework. If there is anything taken from previous projects, we will update the framework to make sure that we cover off anything that we've taken from previous projects in terms of things that we should have looked at as we were going along, or strengths, people involved, officers that should be brought in early, and that sort of thing. Framework.
Richard, sorry.
Is this, Mrs. Stanley, is this entirely a corporate board, or are there positions for managers on this major?
No. These are management structures, but that report and are accountable to yourselves. So they don't involve members. This is around the sound management and oversight of the council's business. But it's right that through this route particularly, but also through ONS and Cabinet, that questions can be asked of senior leaders in the organisation to be accountable in responding to those questions. So each of the 3 boards is chaired or sponsored by one of the 3 directors, and on each board there are 2 assistant directors to try and get that corporate ownership and understanding of the outcomes, because no single project is vested in one part of the council. We're a complex organisation, there's always financial, legal, contractual, procurement issues, quite often some communication or public engagement issues, and we want to ensure there's a wider understanding of those issues as we move forward.
I think that's helpful. But you see your challenges through this committee, through overview, scrutiny, and through cabinet, is that right?
So I think that, you know, one of the issues which we're talking to Mr. White about and was raised through the peer review was around there being clarity of the roles and decision-making powers of the respective committees. And we, you know, as we face increasing pressure on our time, we need to make our business processes cleaner and more efficient, reduce duplication. So the boards are intended to do that, so there is greater clarity of reporting upwards and to members. So this committee is very focused on sound governance, correct procedures advised by the Section 151 officer and the monitoring officer, Ms. Jordan. And then obviously those two internal and external audits. My understanding of overview and scrutiny is to challenge both the executive and hold to account around issues of performance, formative policy development, and obviously cabinet has responsibility for setting the budget, the treasury management policy, the debt recovery policy, which obviously sets the framework for the financial strength or soundness of the financial processes that the authority adopts. We need to make sure that the reports which go to each of those three committees are as streamlined as possible, so that there is clarity of role and responsibility and accountability across the officer team and the executive in terms of decisions that are made.
I mean, I don't doubt competence of all of them. I guess what was behind my question is that members, particularly the ruling party, will have that, still have their hands on each other, and was really
That's the way the council works. I suppose my question related to management plans, project plans. And will the boards have project plans that they're making sure are followed, or will that be down to the project manager? I think that's where I was on CDU getting more involved, and having seen push from everywhere in this council from both parties. I think it's important we know that there's a proper project plan being followed.
So there is a project plan, and that's the responsibility the board will have. What I would say is that all major projects will need to be dynamic. That plan is not static. There will be issues that are unforeseen. There will be unnecessary delays in terms of whether you go through a procurement, whether there's sufficient interest, what the detailed contractual obligations are, planning permission, issues of construction programming, bad weather, all of those things. So each project will have a plan. The major projects oversight board will have that responsibility and ask for explanations as to where there is deviation from those plans up front, and that includes those corporate loans.
And that's great. That's what I'm wanting, is that captured, so that people, when we talked about the learning, there is that reference point back, because so often things, like I say, project plans are dynamic, they change, but it's knowing where they've changed, so that next time you can think, well, can we cut that one off at the pass?
Yeah, and that's what we have this project management framework for, is so that we can capture all of that information. And as we said, learning, we said, for example, if we struggle to get a sufficient number of bids to be able to demonstrate the value for money, for example, then we would learn from that and think about how we could attract bidders, perhaps, or what we need to be able to do to demonstrate value for money in another way. If we recognise that we're not having many people that want to attend the work, that sort of thing is what we're hoping to achieve, as part of the remit of the projects board.
Thank you very much.
But are all projects you do sort of waterfall method?
by business requirements, design, build, test, as opposed to the agile, which is more IT, which is a chunk of all that in one go and a chunk of that.
On the nature of the project. So in terms of the Fakenham and Leisure and Sports Hub project, obviously that's followed on the tails of the Reef at Sheringham, where there were a limited number of bidders, as I understand it, who tendered for that work. So in terms of the Fakenham Leisure and Sports Hub, although the government funding is still to be confirmed for that, Mr. Hems has led a contract engagement day, is that what you called it, where you had a number of potential bidders
That's what it has to do.
yeah, so that many of our externally facing rather than IT based projects, do have a number of gatekeeper positions in terms of delivery. We have the project conception idea. We then have to bid for external funding. We can't, although we may create an expectation in the community, we can't move to that next stage until the funding is confirmed. Then we obviously have to go out for procurement and contract award, advised by colleagues in the legal department. And then obviously there is implementation and then monitoring of spend against the project programme. So if that's the definition of a waterfall, I think that largely applies to externally facing projects in the community capital projects. Whereas that agility or dynamic nature that you've referred to probably does impact greatly or follow that the IT implementation. Although even then, we're not in control of our destiny there, because as we've said, we're often dependent upon the resource that's available by the company that is selling or providing the project through the availability of their project managers. And it would be interesting to hear from your internal auditor or external auditor, the experience of other authorities in that space. I do think we are slightly compromised in some respects by our geography in terms of, are people going to come to site? Can things be done remotely? Where are we in their hierarchy of customers in terms of our overall spend or the size of our contracts? And that's something our teams have to monitor and sometimes, persistently follow our contractors to make sure that we do have the time that's allocated to, or refit is allocated to.
Yeah, I think that's useful. So are the project boards going to report back to this committee then, or give us a report?
Right. The expectation is by exception.
Okay.
So I think we have to be smarter and more efficient it's not about covering anything up or holding anything back, but I think it has to be around by exception. Otherwise, you will be overwhelmed, and indeed, the focus of the staff will be on providing there is that risk.
Yeah, no, I think it's important that maybe we can just have a one line included within the report to say, there is nothing to report this time, so that we know we've asked the question, it reminds us to ask the question. Thank you.
Sorry, just for clarity, do you mean all of the oversight boards, or are you talking about the major projects?
I'm talking about all of the boards.
Okay.
So maybe just a one line, just a one-page report saying.
I think, I'm not anticipating Mr. Henderson's question. I think you will get a more detailed report from the Performance and Productivity Board, because that's got the audit recommendations in and some of the service performance issues. Whereas the major projects and decarbonisation project, they will be dealing with a smaller number of.
And so maybe those two could feed you a report that's sort of a line or get on the bottom of your report.
Yeah.
Well, I would anticipate actually that the audit recommendations would come through on the date of the meeting, but with information being fed through from forms.
Yeah, I suppose the way I see the performance and productivity oversight board working is that you have a single point of accountability, which is me. So if things aren't working, I come and stand before you and you have that conversation with me, and then I go away. But what my hope is that I will have already held other people accountable. It's an accountability process. So effectively, my hope is that we will be in a position where in effect, we're working together, but I am servicing this and other committees where there is that overlap. And that effectively we will as a board have already looked at the accountability and made sure things are being done in a timely and effective manner, so that you are reassured as a committee that those things are in place and sorted, rather than having to say there's quite a lot of audit recommendations outstanding, or there are some slippage on dates. I accept there will be slippage on dates sometimes because of external factors.
I was going to say, I think it's that understanding of why those.
Yeah.
That's the thing, isn't it? I mean, I think so many, well, last time I looked at the report, there haven't even been updates for quite a long time. You know, we all realise things happen, but it's for our reassurance, if we're the committee overseeing this, we need to know that that's definitely being done. People are not forgotten.
Absolutely, and that will go across a number of different areas. I'm quite happy to bring things back on behalf of, but we will have.
I was going to say, it's probably just one line saying nothing of exception to report this time from the other two boards. Just knowing that.
So I have one.
Councillor Cushing.
Are the structures and the terms of reference of these boards documented anywhere? Because I thought that might be something useful for this committee to have access to. Because otherwise we come back in 3 months' time and start talking about boards and we'll.
Provide them to Neil and he can circle and Sarah and
Please, thank you. Right. So we move to agenda item number 10, everyone else is happy? Good. Which is the internal audit progress and follow-up report. Thank you. So yes, so this is your progress report. I can pick up one or two issues. Some comments. There've been no changes to your plan at the moment. You haven't got any final reports at the moment. We haven't got any drafts, but I think one is we're going to draft in the next few days, which is good. And there are some audits that are behind schedule for various reasons, auditor illness, changes with the contractor and staffing. So that means, yes, that they're behind as such. In terms of, we talked previously about another contractor coming in. I've got another contractor who's picking up some audits across all of the consortium, so they're going to do one of more audits in quarter 3, so we're bound to experience a different contractor and contrast. But yeah, slightly behind, but we're slowly getting on. Go straight to questions. Yeah, I mean, I was quite, as I was concerned when I was looking at page, whatever it was, you saw that you've only got one audit on track. Yeah, page 41, page 6 of the audit. That was a concern for me. I think we just really want to see more, or understand that that's really improving next time, because otherwise, when it comes to providing reports going up to external audit, it's, I suppose the whole thing with audit, at the moment for me, it feels like this, we're behind the time. And that's not a reflection on one individual, it's just a reflection of the whole, where everyone's been with these stores and with that. But I suppose it's a key consideration, just
I think the resourcing is a difficult issue because we don't require the contractor to have spare resources. So as would happen here, if we have someone go off long-term sick, you don't open the door and the next person walks in and picks up the job. Everyone else has to pick up a bit. You might get a temporary person and that takes time to come through. I think one of the problems is one of their auditors has been off for a month, it would be kind of almost long-term sick, and they're back, but obviously they're picking up and there wasn't any cover to cover that. So I think if they're off more long term, then they will go and find another resource if they can. But that's just something that they were doing one of your audits at the time. So, but yes, I mean, I'm hoping that, as I said, we'll get one audit that should draft in the next few days, and then hopefully the rest will start to follow through. And then now they're picking up the quarter 3 audits. Hopefully they will be on track and progress through.
Okay, because I was just looking at this and seeing how many Q1, Q2 audits. Are either behind or not started yet.
Yeah, some of them have got planning done, but the actual fieldwork agreed date is later in the quarter, we're moving into the next quarter, so. I'm happy that they're planned and we've got some dates in place, it's just through agreement with when they can be done, they're just. Planning for a later start perhaps in the quarter and. Perhaps you might like, but it has to suit everyone who's
Oh,
involved.
absolutely.
So,
Absolutely, I'm just curious to understand if that's, it's normal and if we should be worried about it.
I don't think at this stage we should worry too much because, we're not quite at the end of quarter two, we're not far off because it's end of September, but we've still got time to be on track and get on track and in the last quarters we're still on track. So
Terrific.
we're in the year, so we can catch up.
Okay, well, that's good, that's good to know. Mrs. Stanley.
Yeah, I would just like to say to the committee to, that I'd like to reassure you that, following, the internal audit opinion for 23-24, where we moved from reasonable the previous year to reasonable / limited, but we are focusing on this to make sure that, our managers, we look at this properly and we proper considerations it should have. And when we, again, next year we'll develop our audit plan, we will make sure that the managers understand, fully what they're committing to and they give the results well. So there could be delays on our part in terms of looking at when people are taking leave and making sure that we don't try and take leave audit for a key member of staff that audit is on leave, that sort of thing. We are focusing on the audit recommendations. We want to get back on track and I hope that we move from reasonable limited quite quickly, within the year, back up to reasonable, if not higher. That's what I would like to.
I think that's what we all like to
Yeah.
see.
And we are taking some action.
Aspirations. Questions?
I do, yes. A simple question is if we are behind the curves, making for 6 we've got all this not started. Is there any, is it worth sort of prioritising those which should be at the start now first? Down the list, it may be obviously the officers of the ones who actually might want to prioritise the issues they think are greater risk and those which are here. But really, we've previously been very comfortable with you not put those at the bottom of the list, we look at and start putting them in security categories.
It's a consideration, yes, to think about prioritising if we were to get further behind and feel like we weren't going to make it as such, it would be worth doing that. Whether it's right to be at this stage, I probably want to just hang on a little bit more to see how we go through the next month.
Just a question as a judgment call.
Yeah, might be
I
possible to
think
make sure we do that.
Though it says not started, I think that might, as of the date of your report was right, but I think as of this morning, it might have actually begun.
Might actually be done, yeah.
Yeah, so-
It's likely a couple of weeks out, isn't
So
it?
yes, I think there is progress being made on some of these.
Some of them had later September dates, which now would be kind of clicking in for the start, so yeah.
I do think Councillor Cushing makes a good point there in terms of the quarter ones and those which are behind. I think Sharon has said that this is not down to North Norfolk District Council, it is down to the resources available through the internal audit contractor. So there is some thought, I'd like to think that there is agreement, there was some thought to the relative prioritisation and phasing of this, and that is around the leisure one is planned for this quarter because the summer has finished. And if the team have any downtime or capacity, it is in October to December because in the months after January, they're writing our green flag applications, they're preparing for the forthcoming season. So, we are a relatively small organisation, we are relatively lean. If there are external factors, capacity of the provider to meet the programme, that can create pressure, unintended pressure within our space as well. So I think I'm grateful to Councillor Cushing raising that point because there is thought given to this programme based on risk, based on previous audit recommendations, and the frequency with which the repeat or follow-up audits are undertaken, and consideration that we've given with our managers to when this could best be accommodated within the year. So there are knock-on implications, and I accept the point that across the partnership as a whole, that there's thought given to the sequencing and capacity, but like any project, it's difficult to catch up.
And I think it's quite, you know, everywhere we know local government is struggling with resources and finding the people to do the job. It's not. That's what I'm saying. You know, it's just unfortunate we've got that sort of nasty conglomeration word is, you know, a build up, a sort of pattern. We just need to try and break it.
I mean, there is the other option of giving more audits to the second contractor in years of passive capacity. So that's another way we can catch up. They are slightly more expensive, that's the rough of it, I suppose. But yes, I could give another couple of audits to them. We can catch up quite quickly.
That's something I think you would have to agree with
Yeah.
Mrs. Stanley as Director of Resources, Section 151 Officer, but I think it's something that we might need to explore if it's your view that the partnership overall is under pressure in terms of the resource that the Ministry has available to it.
That's an option.
Yeah.
Funding the team available so we can sort it out.
But we don't want to be paying too much.
No, I think that's why I was saying I would leave it to the ladies to discuss, because no, particularly if it's no fault of our own.
I mean, just an update, the four at the top of the page that say audit behind, I think data protection more has. But I think part of it said it wasn't actually about to draft, so. They get a nice level of assurance on that one, didn't we, I think? Yeah, we got substantial on that one.
Brilliant.
And then risk management, when we said that behind, it was only about, very,
Yes,
that's about to come through, we need to look at. Not sure what status on the other two, but I know that security is nearly done as well, yeah, so we are
I
making
think, I
progress.
think the private sector housing one is, the field work is done, the report is. I think that's
It
right.
does sound like a nice thing to make it all drafted.
Great, but I have a question related to the security one on page 38 of this report. Really wrote one of this where it said, the field work that some security forces behind the reason for reasons which are currently unknown.
Yeah, I didn't know at the time when I wrote it right up behind because we were trying to, our core team and the IT audits are over there as such. So we're trying to get updates from the IT team, which is really attached to the top. Core team is quite difficult. But I think again, there's a lot of IT audits that have happened in quarter 1 and 2 across the consortium, which is put a little bit of strain on the IT resources that they have. So that's why that went behind again.
And that's fine, it's just understanding that reason, when it, what is this, because it's not understood, it's like, I don't know, got no control of this.
Yeah.
Anybody else got any questions?
I mean, this is probably a small thing in view of the context, but on page 15 and 16, or it's page 15 if you want. There are the two items that are actually urgent. And it seems that, you know, that whereas all of them got some kind of a revised date, that hasn't. And I just wondered, given that they are the only ones that are urgent in that list rather than important, why there was a sort of, you know, sort of completion date, or at least an anticipated completion date, I'm not sure.
No, and I think that's, I mean, it's a question that I asked in the pre-meeting as well, so it's a very valid question. I don't know if somebody wants to answer that.
That's business continuity plans. Yes, we did, we were aware that they hadn't been updated and we need to get them more updated 100%. But the business continuity plans, the service area, the corporate business continuity plan, that is in progress. As far as I know, not yet fully completed. There is a follow-up audit and those recommendations that starts in a bit later on in September. Yeah, I think it's September start or October, so that would pick up on progress as well.
I think in the update that you looked at previously, both of those are marked as complete and sent to the auditors. So I think they are, if they haven't yet been signed off, they are awaiting sign off. So I think that might be just again that disparity between the internal audit report and the more recent update that we've received from officers.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's about what we talked about earlier on today, it's making sure those overlap right.
Yeah, it's a new process, isn't it? So we've just got to work out between us now, how that's going to work, and we can do that.
Anybody with any other questions? Thank you, and we'll move on. And move on to the corporate risk register. Page 3. Anyone have any questions they'd like to ask here?
All that says, we went through this in a lot of detail at last meeting, and it hasn't obviously been much here and there, but it seems significantly different. Expected to be either not true, so less questions this one.
I have a few questions on this. So I was looking at the placement of CR 002 and 036, the two postal ones. And I wondered, I agree they're both impacted. But we should feel like they're under control. And they not go down to the 4-3 box. Do you know any reason why they're so? CR 002 and CR 036, they're the two postal ones. I just wonder whether we're being overly cautious or whether.
I'm going to struggle to be able to see both of the sort of pages at the same time unless I look over Mrs. Stanley's shoulder. The first one, C002. So we obviously have awarded the construction of the Cromer Munster scheme, and they are in progress and are on track. But we did experience some of the most rapid cliff slips between Trimmingham and Overstrand during this last winter. If you visit the beach, most of the vegetated frontage has been lost in the last 12 months because of the groundwater that's coming out of the cliff. So it's not really to do with erosion from the base of the cliff, which is the situation at Haysborough, position at Trimmingham and Munsley, Trimmingham, Sidestrand and Overstrand is more dynamic and is worsening, and so we have had to add into the action here a scheme of protection for the coastline at Overstrand needs to be developed, because I think it has been brought to our attention by the coastal engineers that there is a risk that some of the groins and promenade area are failing, or there is debris moving down the cliff through groundwater. I would be more comfortable, I think, in terms of potentially revising the score for CRO 36, because the funding is confirmed in full and those schemes are being delivered in accordance with the project management plans. There was, in terms of the dynamic response, there was the cost of the Cromer scheme, for example, is £5,500 a day, and there was a day 3 or 4 weeks ago when there were a lot of people in Cromer when the tide was out, and so people populated the beach, which prevented Balfour Beatty being able to work safely, notwithstanding their systems and processes that they had in place. And that was well managed by Balfour and the council's coastal team and our comms team. So I think it could be that score could be revised into a more positive position. I think as managers, we would be less comfortable with revising CR002.
I mean, I'm comfortable with leaving them where they are. I just wanted to understand a bit more about why they were.
Yeah.
I mean, you're the experts in this. I'm not asking them to be moved just to make me feel better.
No, I was trying to reassure you that, I don't think we can. I think we would be at fault to change the grading for CR002. I think with regards to the implementation of monthly and chroma scheme, I think that is in accordance with the project plans.
I was just going to say that we are ending. There are still rocks coming in,
To the end of the
and
month.
we are coming to the point where we are at greater risk. I thought about this one quite carefully, and I think we're at greater risk of losing days where we've got more than half a metre swell and they can't unload the rocks.
Yep.
So although the project has got ahead of schedule and has been really good, I suspect there are some points within the project that the risk is now higher because of the unpredictability of the things.
Yeah.
Don't mean to contradict.
No.
myself, but, just sitting there, living with it and watching it. And I know that there was a day, the other day, they couldn't unload rocks.
Yeah.
Because it was too, they could still do the.
They can still do the placement.
Placement, which they were, but it still means that are just sitting out there
Yeah, and they need
outside my bedroom window, just doing nothing.
and they need the supply of rock to be able to maintain the
Yeah,
placement program.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's correct.
You can guarantee the weather in the next 24 hours will be terrible because I'm getting them. So.
Well, my roof's on as well, so. Weeks.
Okay, so there was that. Anyone else want to come? I've got some more questions. Yes.
Sorry, sorry, this is on page 76, this is the Rocket House. On the first column, the description of the risks, it says that in item 3, it says unknown additional repair issues arise, damage due to weather events made after any impersonating. And on the progress update, it says technical advice has been received on waterproofing. Architects presumably already been appointed. I just wonder whether there has been any advance on the unknown additional damage that might arise from weather. But I mean that's too specialised for this committee, perhaps.
Yeah, I don't think it's something that we can. We can answer until, and certainly until they start digging holes and finding out a bit more about what they're doing.
Oh, right, so yes,
It's still a bit of an unknown. I don't know when the next time is.
I was going to say that's one of the things you're never going to know until probably the storm hits.
Yes.
What damage is possible because we wouldn't have thought some of the damage would have occurred.
Absolutely not. Yeah, I think the damage that we're repairing though is from the cliff side rather than from
Seaside.
yeah.
So that's the waterproofing aspect, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, right. So that's actually
It's something back.
that
So there couldn't be any storm.
yes, I think I see the kind of disparity between the comparative confidence and progress update and uncertainty of the works. I can see
So
that.
they're just in the building.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's two different sides to it.
Yeah.
Yes, perfect sense. Anybody else? That's a board.
Thank you.
Oh, sure.
No, sure.
CR038, Pakenham Leisure Centre. And obviously this one, the risk has gone up tremendously. Yeah, I do feel that it's a challenging one for us. I know we've been paid for what we've done so far. Just wonder if there's any other way of managing this moving forward. Other than sort of.
I think it's good.
We'll keep treading water.
I was gonna say, I think it's good that we've got that money that we already spent.
Absolutely.
So that there's no exposure for the council, I think that's excellent. I'm very concerned, and I'm sure the local members are even more concerned that this is actually going to happen. I don't know what more we can do, whether anyone's got any bright ideas, but, you know, if the new government aren't planning on building hospitals and are taking away winter fuel payments, I would be surprised if they pursue paying for leisure centres. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think if we look at this in the context of the original risk, so if you look at the first column and the cause of the risk, the description of the risk, and the consequence, clearly the movement that we have had in terms of the delay means that there is an impossibility of achieving that final window. And we were in the early tranche of reaching ministerial sign off, although obviously the election then, having returned our MOU, then paused everything, and the latest condition that we have is one of waiting. But there is some indication that the end date of that waiting might be the budget on the 30th of October this year. Suppose in terms of that original risk, there is no way they can hold us to a deadline when the delay has been, you know, so fundamental. So I think the risk as originally described remains, because we don't know what the new timescale might be. But I think there is we've managed that risk associated with continuing with works around Riva Stage 2 and now Riva Stage 3. So the intent is that we will still put in for the planning permission sometime towards the end of this month, early October, which puts us in the best position that we possibly can be if we get a go ahead and the funding to be able to continue with a construction phase. I think from that perspective, it's right that the risk is there. Obviously, we will have to amend the risk and revisit it as and when news comes through, both into whether it's positive news and we get a new completion date, or that it becomes a position of no fund, you know, of non-funding facility, and what then happens. I think as it stands at the moment, it's worth retaining the risk as specified, but accepting that the original purpose for which the risk was created, we're in quite a dynamic situation. So I think leave it as is, and we will continue to manage. There is quite a significant risk process in the background associated with the project, which has picked up on those, and we do look at on a very regular basis, and we have just increased the risk score associated with government decision, etc. I think the main issue for us as an authority that has reduced is that exposure we have to financial expenditure we might not get back, because government did provide us with an interim payment up to our expenditure up to the July position. So we did get £650,000 back in our expenditure.
I think in the short term, it is something that all leadership team are all over in terms of our position. I think in terms of, I think you're right, Chair, that the position nationally in terms of public finances and the statements which the Chancellor is making in advance of the budget on the 30th of October is something that we need to be mindful of. In the scale of things, this is a relatively small project nationally, and we're also mindful of the statements of the Deputy Prime Minister about placemaking and place shaping. And obviously, Fakenham is a town that is proposed for future residential growth, and if you have residential growth, you need some public infrastructure to support that growth, and that will be the position we continue to present to officials from MHCLG.
Which makes perfect sense, and that would be a large population in the development. So, thank you. That was as well. Okay, thank you. I think you were next, and then I'll come back to answer.
Thank you. Okay. I want to go to CR10 housing delivery, and also it's not an impact on CR35 failure to deliver the local plan. Clearly, as the conference states in July, the government's draft NPPN increased the targets by 70%. I haven't seen anything come out on that yet from high command of the council. So, what was your thinking on that in terms of what impact that may have on the local plans? I'm assuming that was was based on the pre-July position. And is there does the local plan effectively substantive enough to accommodate that increase?
So housing delivery has been a significant issue for us in recent times because of mutual neutrality. The work we did when officials visited us in February from Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government did identify that the falling off of housing completions was having an impact on our council tax base, our new homes bonus payments, future planning applications to the extent of around £350,000 in terms of impact on the revenue account, and was also contributing to increasing homelessness and length and duration of accommodating homeless households whose need was arising in the district within temporary accommodation. And that's why the score is at 20. The local plan was based on a sound evidence base in terms of the expectations of the previous government. It was formulated on the basis of the housing targets which were agreed or required by the previous Conservative administration nationally before those targets were lifted or removed. We maintained our position that we felt there was a sound evidence base for the housing numbers that were projected over the lifetime of the plan. I believe that has to be our starting point. We obviously need a conversation with government, and this will be for the response to the inspector's report, which obviously we didn't get until the 22nd of July, was delayed by the calling off general election after examination in February. We will need to take a view as to the deliverability of those additional housing numbers in this district, given our landscape designations, given our infrastructure constraints. I think to increase the delivery by another 70% over the plan period is hugely ambitious, and we need a conversation with government about what that means, because it's not necessarily an unwillingness. We don't have brownfield land. Arguably, if you look at the call for sites that the local plan process went through, we had a lot of landowners who offered land who were in principle prepared to accept land for development. We were an area of significant water scarcity, so we would need to see investment by in water. We are an area of significant electricity constraint, so we've got huge volumes of offshore renewable energy coming through this district. It's almost like having a motorway through the district and with no junction to get on or off. And the UK Power Network's local electricity distribution network across the county, but particularly to the north of Norwich, is severely constrained. And so it's not an issue of us just granting permission for extra homes. This isn't necessarily a market issue, it's a locational issue. And I think government might have to understand that, because there isn't viability to address those strategic infrastructure deficits to allow for significant housing growth at the scale that is proposed. But that will be something that the planning team need to discuss with government officials and your ministers in the weeks and months ahead.
Clearly sympathetic to everything you've just said. Thank you. Obviously, but yeah, I'd be interested to see what the response from the government is, given those figures seem to be. I don't know. I'm sure they won't pluck out of the air or quite how they're formulated. I don't know. But as you say, when it comes up against reality, I think it's going to be enormously challenging to
I'm not defeatist, I'm not saying we should be, but I'm saying I think government need to understand the constraints that perhaps exist here relative to other locations. This isn't around an unwillingness. There will be some opposition by some communities to the scale of some developments, but you know, those locations where on the basis of our settlement hierarchy, our landscape constraints, environmental constraints, so places like Fakenham, North Walsham West, parts of Cromer where relatively large scale development is proposed. Those proposals have been placed in front of the community. There might be reluctance, acceptance on some parts, but there is an acceptance that scale of development should be planned for and accommodated. The delivery will come down to market forces and the constraints of the utility provision that I've described. And it might be that we need to, share our practical experience on the ground with government officials to say, we're not defeatist, but we think needs to be a degree of realism in what we can deliver here, given those challenges.
And I think, in support of what you've just said as well, that information that I was talking about from Councillor Brown also talks about, some of the ways it is possible to work on some of those, but constraints that the chief executives outlined as well. So things like some of the sites that were initially considered, whether we have to go back and visit those again. And those talk about some of the villages, whether some of those became growth villages, even though we haven't designated these growth villages.
But we also need to factor into that health provision, both primary care and remote hospital care, which is acute in Norwich, where there are wider pressures in terms of the housing growth proposed in the Greater Norwich area. As a council, we've expressed our reservations around lack of provision of elderly care and wellbeing services, the standing empty of Benjamin Court, given our age of demographics. This is a complex issue. I think CR 035 is largely around our corporate capacity to deliver in terms of timescales, member capacity, officer capacity if we lose staff, whether we have the organisational capacity to deliver and respond to those changing circumstances. Whereas I think the one CR10 housing delivery is more around those practical resource constraints, capacity issues, infrastructure, etc.
And I think we've seen with CR10, you can see the colours and the explanations there are quite explicit. That's ridiculous.
It's just a comment, Madam Chairman. I think the sharing with government officials is incredibly valuable and key, because I get the impression that they really don't understand the dynamics of the rural community, rural area, which actually really described to us very effectively.
And I think see out there as implications as well.
Yes.
Feel into it. Any more questions? Okay, lovely. Oh, the risk of taking roundabout.
Which one's that, please?
It's CR 032.
Say it's a significant risk. I'm just looking at the comments.
Yes, so I suppose my question was, schemes planned to commence on the 9th of September, did it?
No, but payment has been made to the county council, which leads us to believe that there is an announcement imminent about when that project will start. The local member has been advised of that, and Martin Fulcher, Director of Place and Climate Change, is discussions with the county council about when a formal announcement will be made as to the commencement of that project.
That's just curious. Lovely. Okay, well, we will have to move on to the next item of the agenda then. Thank you. So next is the annual governance statement 23-24 and local code of corporate governance. Anybody wants to present this item?
Well, this is a report that I have written. has taken, information largely from the internal audit, opinion of reasonable, much limited, and also the self-assessment assurance statements, the contents of the report, are presented are based on that, and there is also an action plan at the end of the report to say what we're going to do to address any issues we identify over this coming year. And again, I'd like to assure members that we will be making sure that that action plan is implemented.
Does anyone have any comments they'd like to make on this report?
It covers territory that we looked at earlier, so.
I have, well, I was asked to review it, and it's only short notice, and I sent a range of comments. Those being implemented into the report, included into the report, you know. They're right. Are they going to be?
No. But the report itself is an officer report that's required to be signed by the leader of the council and the chief executive. That I was asked to send the report as you were interested to see it beforehand before it appeared on the agenda. I wasn't, if I could say, I wasn't asking for comments or amendments to the report as it was. They haven't been incorporated, but if there are comments that you'd like to make, I can.
I'm just curious on some points. I think there were a couple of points that we also looked at. So one of my comments was on page 1 of the report. That was to do with the government's arrangements around the planning improvement plan. I didn't understand what you meant by the partnership and contract management arrangements. You would need to put some more light on that, please.
And what page is that on, sorry?
Page 1.
1 to 3.
Right.
Sorry.
Bottom.
We do have partnership arrangements and contract arrangements, and that we will need to continuously review those to ensure that we obtain best value for money from them.
Were there any in particular that you were referring to, or just in general?
No, none in particular. Okay. I know that we do have a lot of contracts coming up for renewal within the next 15 months, and it would be, you know, part of that we would look to make sure that we obtain value for money in renewing those contracts.
Page 6. It was a typo, 3.5. There was an on, didn't need to be in there in line. 3.3.5.3.
Yeah.
We found 3.8, page 7. I don't know, I just found it a bit confusing where it was worded, but maybe that's just my reading. If no one members picked it up then.
Sorry, which page is this again, sir?
Sorry, this is page, sorry, I've got
88.
88. And I was looking at 3.8, second point from the page.
I think, yeah, we can look at whether that paragraph reads correctly, there's that sentence, I think, then, I think the full stops from putting on place.
I think it's just a,
Yeah,
it's nothing. Could I ask please, when was it says training being provided to members on risk? You know when that last training was last delivered to members?
I believe it was part of the induction programme in May of last year.
Okay.
I mean, councillor Fletcher wouldn't have had it because he was elected at a by-election, but I think all of those members that were elected at the full council elections last year, there was a specific workshop on risk.
Great.
So could I just say that, I mean, I didn't realise that the actual expression is important in this, but so I go back to page 1. I'm just wondering whether the 4 lines up from the bottom in that sentence, that the main areas for improvement being the start of the implementation of the planning improvement plan. Would it be easy simply to say the main area for improvement is that? Sorry, I'm being an English.
We can take that to a look at that.
It just seems to be a very difficult sentence to get your head around, and I think it's because it reads thorough and singular. I don't know.
And my main query in this report. Let's see, yes. I'm just going to get the right page number for everybody. Is page number 94. Point 4.3.3. Reviewing any high level audit recommendations. Year-end review of the governance by CLT included, and it says reviewing any high-level recommendations that are remaining outstanding at the year-end, taking appropriate action to address these where necessary. My question would be then, why was there an outstanding action from 1920 there?
Yeah, so that related, I believe, to the section 106 planning obligations, and that followed the implementation of the uniform system. It was a supplementary module, so the system needed to be in place and solid before it could be tracked back for historic section 106 agreements to ensure that the timelines were properly articulated and then ensured that those milestones had been met and the planning obligations secured. So it was a subject of consideration or discussion on a number of occasions by CLT, but there was a capacity issue within the planning service to make that module live. We have employed a planning obligations officer as part of that. That person is now in post. So I believe that it's now been substantially complete, but there was a delay in delivering that.
Thank you. Anybody else got anything? No. We just have to note that.
I think we had wasn't a manual, going back to Councillor Christian's comment earlier on in terms of systems. We were tracking planning obligations through a Excel spreadsheet rather than there being a module which linked planning applications journey end to end in terms of milestones and drawing down the money. And I think it was largely sat within finance, and that's not where it should sit. Really, it should sit within the planning department.
If we reviewed the annual code of corporate governance and the local code of corporate governance and annual governance statement, are we happy to approve it? Are those in favour, please? Thank you. To item 13 on the agenda. Anybody from presenting this? Clearly going to read the papers, I'm assuming. I can present the report, or if anyone wants to ask me questions, you want to go straight to questions, people have read it. I can present the report. Or if anyone wants to ask me questions, you want to go straight to questions, people have read it.
I can present the report.
Do you want to go straight to questions, people have read it?
This is some concern over work to migrate. The local land registry, NNDC's local land charges register, the HM land registry, the associated revenue. So looks like the council will be losing a third of its land charge income, 50 to 60,000. And it seems to me that we need to be careful that we do get the fees for parts 2 and 3 of the land charges. I know it's not just an ordinary district council issue, but it seems a little bit messy in the way it's been introduced, which is obviously not your fault. However, you will be presented with undertaking it. Do you feel that it may be a challenge with the sorting out the 2 and the manpower and the finance? It just seems to me you landed with this issue.
Looks like a raiding part.
Yeah, it does.
Finance to me.
This, I would say, a strange one, yes, in terms of the way it is going to be operated going forwards. But it is what it is, unfortunately, and we will, let's say, we'll still be required to maintain the records and then pass the data over to land registry, and we will lose some income. We just have to make sure that Council Boyle says that we collect what we can for the parts that we keep, and try and keep our costs to a minimum in those areas where we're passing the information over, making sure that our data is kept up to date, fully cleansed, you know, so that we can keep that work to a minimum. And we just really have to get on with it. Yeah, choice.
So does that imply that the bits that the council does do will actually increase in price or to compensate, or will you just take the hit?
We will lose some income because that we have to do maintain the register and pass the information to land registry, and they'll be able to recover the fees for that part of the work, even though we're contributing a lot in then having that information. Yes, so we will look at the fees. We always look at fees and charges on an annual basis to make sure that we're charging the right level of fee, whether there's any scope to increase it. We will have to look at that. We will try to, obviously, we can.
I think this is unfortunate for North Norfolk because our land charges service has always been a top performer. But a number of local authorities have underinvested, or the length of time local land searches took in terms of property sales was very long. And so obviously there has been this centralisation through the land registry, and I believe that we have been negatively impacted by that, but it is a cost that we're going to have to absorb or manage in terms of the responsibilities to maintain the register.
Anybody else got any questions on that?
And the main comment is about the project on that one is that we're on target to deliver within the time frame. So
That's right.
big news in terms of where we're going.
And have you received, did I read somewhere about the money coming in tranches for it?
Yes.
Did we get the first tranche?
If we do that amount, yes, we would have done. I'm not sure whether we would do that.
I thought we were due, relatively due some so far, but that's fine. So this is just for noting, isn't it? It's nothing that we need to do, just to make sure we are aware. So, thank you very much. Next item is the procurement exemptions register, page 109. There's a couple of items on here.
I just review what we said the RAC committee on a rolling basis, the number of exemptions that we've had within that period. And from this particular form, I've said how many there were the time before, so 4 exemptions previously, and for this period, there are 2 exemptions detailed.
Thank you. Lovely, and then the last training needs assessment.
Yes. Okay. Yes, we sent out the training need assessment to everyone. We've had 406 responses. But that's all the outcomes of detailed in appendix one, and I think we're saying that a general overview training session for all of the 9 core areas would probably be beneficial for everyone. And if there are specific things within that you wanted them, that would be accommodated. And then anything in particular where people thought something the score was so low that it was kind of screaming out, and they don't understand particularly area. In terms of the feedback, 3 out of the 7 surveys were sent back, and again, we kind of concluded that out of those, people believe the committee is fulfilling its purpose with the positive comments and the conduct as well. We thought this for people to know and agree that that can be quite important.
I'm happy with that, and
I agree, I think some general training would be helpful. I can't recall other than induction training that we would all absolutely see when they were elected. Training.
I think there's never any harm. I mean, I've signed up for some LGA training as chair of the committee. Going forwards, that's in October, I think. I think you've done the same thing on different elements.
Yes, see, I couldn't do the other one, so you actually, I can't remember what.
There's also some audit training going on the chairs of audit committees. But I would say there is also, if you go onto the LGA portal, there is an audit e-learning course available that people can do in their own time as well. Which is quite interesting, and I think it's also less people are sometimes happier
Online
to do online and do it in their own time and look at things. So, I mean, I think you can sign up if you're not on the LGA training, it's free. It's no cost.
Yes, I think it's worth us thinking about, probably think about training and promotion together, but you think about what is the best way of delivering, because it could be that there is a really good online course on counter fraud, and that's the best thing to do rather than us call someone in to do a presentation and we'll ask questions. I think it is worth us thinking about what's the best method for you to get that overview. It won't necessarily be us sitting around and having a sort of trainer. I think there are some good options out there, as you say.
And I think that's the important thing, as long as we know what those options are, and buckle down and do it. That's right. And I think that's.
Would you like us to do a bit of research into that then, to see what we can find online for members? That would be the best thing, yeah, because we could go through, we'll look online and see what the courses there are, and
No, that would be useful, thank you. And I can send you the last training update I had from the LGA with all the courses on there. There's a load of audit courses that they can, some of which do incur costs, so there's some risk and some incur costs, some don't. Lovely. Thank you very much.
sorry, just answer. What's to do with in mind going to members rather than doing for that's quite specific though, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I was going to talk to you afterwards. I've done presentations to committees before just in terms of the role from the external auditor point of view. I can share the content of that, if that fits in with and it covers our responsibility, your responsibilities from an external audit point of view. So considering, I guess, the delays and the backlog, that might be quite timely if 24, 25 is going to be a key year for us.
Well, thank you. Lovely. Thank you very much indeed for coming up to the other report, which you really need it. So we come to the work programme. I think when we come to that, I'd like to ask the monitoring officer just to update us on an item that's not on the agenda, but was on the list of actions, and that was the appointment of an independent person.
Yeah, so the SIPA guidelines were that audit committees should have an independent person suitably qualified to assist the committee. Not law, so you don't have to share, but members decided that they wanted to do that. And it's something that other councils, not all of them, but some councils have already got that in place and some are looking to do that. And I think at the last RAC committee, I did mention that I had a meeting with other monitoring officers in the area who were maybe also thinking of getting an independent person. Well, I did have a meeting and none of them were like in our timeline, but did express an interest in the future of a pool of independent persons or possibly sharing. So we created a recruitment pack with a job description, so to speak, which included a willingness to work at other authorities as and when required. So that advert has been advertised. It had a closing date of Monday at 5 PM. The advert's still online though, if you want to have a look at it. We did get a small but good number of applicants in the local area who on the face that haven't been proven properly at the moment, but seem to potentially meet the requirements of the advert. And so an interview date has been penciled in with the chair, Councillor Fishing, myself and I, and then all of them attending as well to interview a number of applicants, and that's 26th of September. Penciled in, so subject to people in available. Although on the advert, I do believe we set out that the interview would be on the day that.
And I've actually asked Neil if it's possible to make those in the afternoon because of some audit training that is going on in the morning. I think online.
Online.
Yes, the
Right.
audit training is online.
Right.
So we'll be here in the afternoon.
I think that may be possible.
That was just a question if it was possible.
That's
For
fine.
you. Lovely, thank you. Okay, so we talked about the work programme last time. And wanting to potentially bring in some new items. And Councillor Cushing very kindly sent us some input. I'm just going to ask you to give pleasure to have some of your thoughts.
Actually, it's strange enough, I can't actually connect to the system, so even though I'm next door to the IT, so I'm trying to, so I can't actually.
It's online.
It's actually, there's a lot. I was looking through it, that sounds familiar.
Yes, these were your,
I want to actually,
so the
it's a while since I've
committee work plan items, it was the suggestions received from committee members are, and there were 4 there.
Yeah.
So,
like I could walk through them then, so,
Yes,
so I put it in governance, obviously we look a lot at governance in terms of doing that, but also, when we look at operational governance, the financial controls. We do go to a lot of depth in terms of standard procedures. Decisions that are made, I just wonder whether that be useful to extend that to wider decisions that are made by the council and administrations, as like for the cabinet and for councils. So, for example, if we have somebody contentious of late, if there were procedures in place, there's a sort of sting out the tail in terms of business cases being put forward. That might help matters in terms of what comes before people. In terms of doing that, it does seem to be very, you should be with the council in your time, you would have seen things where you've got some decisions of cabinet which have plenty degree of information on them. Other times we see things which sometimes very little in there at all. get decisions made nonetheless. So it was just an open question that would be more beneficial with our standards elsewhere. So we see one of the benefits we have for the term with the teams that they get from the cost of the councils, most things are done there. Loans that we could benefit from.
I was going to say, I suppose that the word in your phrase that made alarm, not an alarm bell, but a question go off in my head is operational. Because obviously, as members, we're not getting into the operational details.
No, and nor should we. It's actually in terms of where it comes, where it touches in the world of members, I'm guessing, where members are making decisions on items. That's why I mentioned.
I think there's a possibility of some sort of governance around members of council make decisions, looking at the policies and procedures around that and looking at some of the decisions and putting them through. So we can think about how that's going to work for the next year and then deal with it and think about
I think it's one of those things too, though, if very nature of cabinet-led council is that cabinet make those decisions. See what I mean?
Oh, yes, it is.
I mean, when we're checking that policies are being followed properly or that sort of thing. I don't know, I need to think about it a bit more. Now I understand it a bit more.
It's the information which the cabinet had before, which they make that decision. I guess what information would you expect them to have before?
But you wouldn't necessarily normally share that with your opposition. That's what I'm saying, it's the nature of the way a cabinet system works in the council.
Yes, I suppose if you're making substantial financial decisions, it's not just your position, it's what you want to make, what you're open to the general public who might have the opportunity to those meetings.
I suppose it depends on financials and whether too they are subject to financial constraints, you know, whether they have to go to purple papers and things like that. There's no reason why. I think we need to think about it because I'm saying half of my brain's going yes, and half of my brain's going there's questions to be answered.
To be, well, just give an example, this is not a real example, but in reality, then we have that system, we have to say, why could we not be spend £5 million buying a building in the or wherever the whole. That's it. There's no justification. I mean, there doesn't have to be any justification that you always start there, put your hands up when that happens. From the public's point of view, who represents the public in that decision. Now, I need to say, right, well, that's fully procedurally correct, and they can do that, and they've got the power to do that. But to the question, on behalf of this opposition, as a councillor whose job is to hold the council to account about the politics, is that correct? Should there be something that actually says actually in order to do that, there should be a business case there.
But the cabinet will have seen this.
Yes, but the question is, there's no open question.
I mean, I think for me, one of the things that is really important, these officers here who worked with me when I was leader, I'm telling you, it's like when they ask too many questions at times. But if I'm to spend, you know, ask the leader or ask the cabinet member under that model, if you need to be asking those questions because you are spending public money. You're not spending money out of your own pocket. You can't just receive. I think Mr. Blatch will know, Mr. Henge will certainly know that if they put a report on the front of you without a justification of why they wanted to spend X, Y, or Z and haven't looked at all the different options on why we got to that one, the cabinet wouldn't have discussed it, brought it forward.
Yes, so it's like probing forward, is it the question of open government, I guess.
I suppose then you're looking at a committee system.
So I mean, it's a provocation. So if you've got to ask the question, what should you be looking at? That's one of the questions.
Why don't we should take it away and discuss it between us?
I think what Chris was saying is the extent to which cabinet shares information, because if we are going to make challenges all of this, and these are not just political, sometimes we need to see why did you do that, what are the options in front of you, may not agree with the decision, but the procedure, the correct procedure is being followed, and it's a fair outcome. I think That's what's important to me.
So. If the information that comes before cabinet through highly confidential and fairly considered, if they're doing a great job, then we should be fairly confident, that the right decision is made, and the difficulty comes in sharing some of that information. Am I right? That with
It can be, and it can be that
it can become, things can get leaked out and it can become
I think they can.
an issue. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, but that's, you know, you're saying about the two things in your head. There's a bit of me saying, well, they would, whoever's making these decisions, and it goes for any decision that you're making within the council.
Whoever is
You're making a reasonable decision from the information you've got, and you have to trust that at some point along the line, no matter which officer it is, yes, we can question to a degree, but we have to trust that those people are doing the best job they can. And we probe into other bits and pieces here, but I'm not sure that where we come from.
I can see there's issues of confidentiality, Jill, and I appreciate that, and that'd have to be sort of strict boundaries around not leaving.
I think.
Sorry, when I reached there, I have seen as a leader, I have tried to share in the past, and I'm going back early days, and not commenting on anyone in this room. But things do not stay confidential always, and that is, it can be a very major issue. Confidentiality is hugely important.
Yeah, I guess I'm looking to my own standards really. I don't know what's happened.
Yes, I know.
And I think this, you're probably right, this is something we should take away from here.
I think we do, otherwise we could end up being until 7 o'clock at night.
No, I was just going to agree, because I think, I can't remember who said it earlier, but it was about understanding those roles and responsibilities very clearly. Because in effect, in part, what you've described could be argued is the role of overview and scrutiny. So around the decision-making process separated out. And I think we need to just go and have a think about those things and try and work out where the best position is that for that to sit, so that we're not duplicating. And so as officers, we absolutely fundamentally understand where those reporting lines are, so that we can keep all of you in a adequate position of being informed.
I guess I did partly have my own scrutiny hat on, so.
I think there's an importance that everyone is as informed as they possibly can be. And I think it's right to make sure that that is happening, and if we can change something, do something, we will. But we'll look at it.
So I think this authority has a cabinet and leader model of governance that's long-standing under the Local Government Act. So that gives powers and executive authority to that group of people, in conjunction with myself as Chief Executive and Head of Paid Service and the corporate leadership team. That means that the cabinet and the leader are able to take decisions under the terms of the Constitution, with various levels of authority and delegation. There is, and this, it is difficult in terms of a district like North Norfolk, where, covers a large geography, where population is concentrated in different places, where the historic asset base of the authority is concentrated in different places. The cabinet has a responsibility to our community at large in terms of value for money, sound governance and procurement practices, but there will be decisions taken that do sometimes concentrate resource in one particular part of the district, and that needs to be understood in terms of our risk, liability and responsibilities. There will also be advice and information that's presented to cabinet around opportunities that present and exist in a place at a given time, perhaps around government funding programs. And so, we've talked today around Bacon Leisure Centre, we've talked around the Bacon Roundabout, which would represent very significant contributions by this authority at this moment in time to that part of the district. But that is after a period of many years when perhaps the authority hasn't directed significant capital sums to Fakenham and the immediate area. There is an element of choice with leadership comes responsibility, but there is also an element of choice, and it's how that's presented through a manifesto and then a corporate plan about what those relative priorities might be at any given time. And I would hope that all members of the council have confidence in that process, but in any one year, some people might perceive that they are winners or losers, but that needs to be set in a context. And there is a perennial issue for this authority, which is often raised during budget processes around the amount of money we may or may not spend on Cromer Pier, for example. It is a unique asset. It gives this district a lot in terms of tourism identity, but it is also a significant liability in terms of the responsibility and burden that comes from having that responsibility in terms of that investment. And we have tried to minimise the costs of the council taxpayer as a whole in terms of the operating contract to run the attractions on the pier, but the actual superstructure is like the Forth Bridge. It requires continued and ongoing investment, and that is something that in a 4-year cycle, politically needs to be given thought and consideration to. So I think we can have a conversation around and seek to deepen or widen understanding around the issues identified in bullet point 1, if that would be helpful. I do think that within the cabinet and leader model, it was promoted back in around 2001 with the intention of providing greater certainty around decision making and deliverability, which perhaps didn't exist around a committee structure of governance. There are benefits and disbenefits from each approach, and it is open to the council to consider refining or altering that model if it so choose.
I understand the authority concept, Mr. Blatch, and I really didn't have a particular project.
No, I'm not. So I tried to pick a project in Cromer which I think everybody could relate to, because it is an asset with which comes a significant degree of responsibility.
It's just under knowing. I mean, there may be a situation where we're not talking about this, but an imaginary council where the officers think this is a really bad decision, but the authority through the leader and the cabinet think, no, politically we're going to go for this. And I think it's quite right that sometimes you have to look underneath of the decision and the facts that have been presented to come to such a decision. And I think that's where I'm coming from. I don't know if Christopher would agree with me.
I think that's an overview and scrutiny situation.
Around policy, but responsibilities on me as head of paid service and chief executive on occasion is to deliver messages to the leader of the council that it would be not wise to make this decision or to take that course of action. That will be from experience professionally, taking advice from the chief finance officer or the monitoring officer, the experience that is gained through the network of chief executives, Society of Local Authority Chief Executives, and indeed the Local Government Association. I wouldn't expect that to be a regular occurrence, but sometimes, at the moment, I am having to say to the cabinet, you have £1.8 million to find next year to deliver a balanced budget, and that will involve difficult decisions and choices. And that message We had a workshop with Cabinet last Tuesday, and we said that as a corporate leadership team, because the council has to set a balanced budget next February. And at the moment, the demand for services, particularly temporary accommodation and housing, is placing an acute strain on this council's budget. And it is difficult because none of us came in, elected members or officers, came into local government to cut services. But that's the hand we've been dealt. That's the context we're operating in at the present time. And it is very difficult in an authority like North Norfolk, where so much about our place is based on discretionary service provision. So a lot of the things that we choose to do, we like to do, underpins our tourism economy, is not something that central government says statutorily we have a responsibility to provide. And that is what makes North Norfolk special. But it's difficult to say unique because there are other parts of the country with similar pressures, but it is a choice. You know, the decision of Cabinet yesterday to look at public toilet provision, there is a choice there. We don't have to provide those. Some authorities have passed their responsibility for that or given up their responsibility in that space some time ago. Our costs are approaching £1 million to provide that service for 37 public toilets. And there is fluctuating population and visitors and residents throughout the year. And we need to be honest and say, can we provide those facilities to all people all the time? And I know that when people do walk their dogs or take walks in the winter, and you know, the nature of our population might mean they need a toilet more in the winter than they do in the summer.
Yeah.
But if you've got thousands of people on a beach during the summer day, you might have to flex that resource. And so we might have 4 toilets in Cromer or Sheringham in the summer, or in the winter we can only provide 2. And there is a choice there. There's a political choice, but there's also a financial choice. And that comes with the roles and responsibilities that each of us can.
I think too, when we sat in the cabinet, when we sat in the leaders' chair, some of the decisions that you have to make, and some of the advice you have to listen to and take, because the officers are the people with the professional knowledge to support members. It's very helpful sometimes as members because it's not what we came into office to do. But that's where we are. Anyway, I think.
But we can have a workshop on it if that would be of value.
Think about how we handle it and then come back to the next meeting and follow up on it. I think hopefully the project management.
I think
that will be covered by the new.
Yes, I wasn't aware of that.
I wasn't when you wrote it, so.
Like to be ahead of the game.
We like that.
Indeed, business continuity, some of which you mentioned earlier, so I thought some of us we keep an eye on, but I think that's been looked at regularly, that shouldn't be an issue. Then risk register, I'm pleased we do spend on, and under your chairmanship, you do spend a lot of time delving into that in more detail, as we've done in the past, which I think is good. I just question mark any real strategic risks are any key operational plans you're willing to scope, and that's not something we should do, that's just a very good question.
With our operational risk, we do review them, you know, we've recently brought on Flash, our major project with. We do review our operational risks, some consider adding and then removing those ones, so they're no longer risk to the organisation. So I think it is you know, fluid and living thing that's sort of changes risk register. And I hope that we would bring those operational risks when they become significant our board with all members on their corporate risk register.
Well, it's quite worth mentioning.
Yeah, we do review those.
Our biggest operational risk is financial stability, which obviously we talked about as a strategic issue as well, and then probably our ability to attract, recruit and retain staff, because there is obviously a turnover in any organisation of this size, and our geography does impact on our ability to attract workers in that you have to make a conscious choice to be here, and the wider economy isn't such that there is that resilience or wider opportunity in the broader economy perhaps. So although it's, we're incredibly lucky to live here, it's a very attractive place, the labour market that we have here does operate as some constraint, particularly for some specialist roles or technical level roles.
Can I ask them, I'm built because I've got months at home. Get papers and got that list. Can I ask other members if they've got any items they would like to bring back, and if we discuss it at the next meeting of work programme and revisit one of your found a solution. That work programme. Anybody else got anything on the work programme? Yes. Having no need to exclude present. Thank you all very much indeed for attending this afternoon. So,